You don't want that showing, do you, Jake? Look.
Your shiny head. No.
But
Get that cap on.
That's that.
We're live though. We are now live. So we're live. So we will let a few people join.
Wait for several thousand people to come on.
Yeah, that's it. So, in the meantime, Des, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you've been up to? So, where did your fishing take you at the weekend, or what have you been doing?
Well, hi to everybody who's watching, and who probably will be watching later on when they get home from work. My fishing's taken me all over the place, really, Jake. I've been to the On the Flyer TV final, which was at Meadowlands, which Gary Rogers runs. And if Gary's watching, yes, I will phone you back, Gary. I had to put the phone down on him just a minute ago. I didn't do that. I think the signal went, so I wasn't being rude, but I will phone you back. So yeah, I went to Meadowlands. I fished a 2-dayer up there, which was basically a practice for the final. And it was brilliant fishing, really good fishing, but also quite frustrating in certain sort of ways because you had to catch quality fish. I think on the Monday I had 32 pound. I caught a few decent fish. I could get a bite of chuck over groundbait at like 10 meters, and I couldn't do any good because the stamp of fish.
Yeah.
But that was the Monday, so I come forth from my section of 10, which wasn't good enough, really, to be honest. But great fishing. And then the following day, I drew on what they call the pump bank, and the wind had got up, and it sort of ruined the day, really. I couldn't really. I ended up with like 14 pound, I think. Well, Andy Bennett won it with 29 pound. He was down the other end of the section. He just caught loads of fish short, and I couldn't catch short, really, or not enough. Very, very frustrating day for me, really. Didn't really learn a lot, which was horrible in a certain way, because obviously going into the final, which was the following Sunday, I didn't catch anything on pellets. I caught a few fish on pellets on the Monday match, and I couldn't get a bite on it on Sunday. It was just horrendous conditions.
So did that was that because of the wind and not being able to present it, or what was?
Yeah, literally, Jake, there was white horses coming at you, at certain times of the day. It was cold, it was, not a good day. But I did catch late on the pole, but that was on maggots over groundbait, and I was sort of coming back, but it just took too long to get the fish going.
Did that then knock you because you hadn't caught? Obviously, it's the conditions, but then because you hadn't caught on the pellets, did that then taint your sort of what you were going to do on the final? Because of that, did you sort of have in the back of your mind, well, if conditions change, I'm not going to be able to present and not being able to catch? And I know a lot of people went into that final thinking pellets were going to be the way. What did that sort of do to your decision making?
A lot of it was down to where you drew. Definitely where you drew. There was areas, good areas of the lake where the stamp of fish made a massive difference. They literally, every bite they get on a pellet was between 14 ounces and 3 pound. And then there was other areas of the lake you would get bites on pellets, but no sort of quality. So it was, it was like in anything in fishing, it was always a gamble. I think really the actual way to approach that venue and that final, maybe I'm talking about Lansdowne, which is the big lake.
Yeah.
It was about having a gamble of probably starting short, catching what you can for 3 hours, 2.5 hours, and then going on the pellet line. The problem was that you had to look after your pellet line, and when you're looking after a pellet line, it ain't always that easy to read how much bait you're going to want to feed.
No.
When you're fishing a line, you can read it better.
You can sort of work out what you've fed, what you think's left in the peg, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that was it was a difficult one. And on the day of the final, I drew a nice peg. I drew 24, and I had Gary Poot next door to me, which I used to fish with a lot with the Dorking team. And he's been going there quite often through the series they have there, Silverfish series. And we both decided to start on a feeder, because it is a good feeder area, and there's good fish there. And first chuck, it was typical what happened. The previous year I didn't actually qualify, but I obviously knew from watching everything on YouTube and stuff that the wind had turned round. And it was uncanny. It's done exactly the same this year, on the same day, on the same match, it went round to an easterly, and on the pump bank, which is where I was the previous Tuesday, which the wind was hacking in there, the wind blew straight off their back. And Jamie Hughes won the final last year, and he drew over there. Lovely conditions. Everybody else was getting like blown off the lake. And when we're, you know, Jake, as well as probably everybody else out there, when you're fishing with soft pellets and things like that, you can get away with fishing in windy conditions with expanders, but it's not so good.
Yeah,
and that's a big advantage when you get the weather right. And the day of the final, really, started on a feeder, caught a 2.5 pound green first chuck. I thought, hello, happy. I caught a few fish. I was doing all right, priming up my other lines on the pole, obviously, looking after them as much as possible, but the wind was making it tricky. Gary, who fishes it quite a bit, was to my left. He was really struggling on the feeder. He was catching little fish. Every bite I had was a decent quality skimmer, but not many bites. And then I just thought I need to, and then after about an hour and a half, I come on the pole on pellets, dropped in, probably fed that pellet line 3 times before I went on it.
Yeah, and how much are you feeding each time?
I fed about 150 mil of micros at the start, and then I topped that up probably 2 or 3 times what I can remember in the first hour and a half, with probably about 100 mil, or slightly less. And I also catapulted some 4 mil soaked pellets over the top. So
is that like a blown Fin Perfect 4 mil, that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, it was a fishery pellet.
Oh, yeah, it is there.
Soaked some of them up overnight, and that was it. And when out there, in the first 3 drops, I caught like 3 2-ounce roach, and I thought that ain't good news.
Not ideal.
So I went back on the feeder, and I was actually getting liners on the feeder, and I could not. They would not really. You get an odd one. And even Gary's like, I'm getting these liners, I can't catch them. And I messed about with what I've said on previous videos and stuff, like putting your ground bait in rock hard, loose, putting nothing through, and nothing made any difference. But every bite you had was a decent fish. It was so annoying. Anyway, it got to a stage where I thought, well, I need to come on the pole. I had to go on pellets again, literally sat there, nothing. Whether I wasn't patient enough, I'm not too sure, but this was late in the match. You just think, come on, I've been looking after this line, I really need this to go under. So I come off the feed. I had to go on pellets, waste of time, but I dropped it on my 11-meter ground bait line, where I've been feeding balls of ground bait with casters, a few dead maggots and worms in, and the fishing was brilliant. It was tough conditions, and the first 2 drops, and I caught 2 1.5 pound skimmers.
Nice.
I thought, this is it.
Lift
I'm
up.
on it. And literally, I had a bite of chuck there in the last. I think I fished that line for probably a good hour and 45, and I've had a bite of chuck, but I've never caught any more quality.
Right.
Which was a gutter, because it never matches. You think all of a sudden, and you just think they're going to rock up, and it could have happened. And that was my gamble of actually staying on that line, feeding it nice. It was literally, Jake, bear in mind, it's an easterly wind, and it was brilliant fishing. You could literally catch 4 fish, top up like that. If you just went in and waited a minute or 2 minutes for a bite, you literally top up again with a ball of ground bait.
Yeah. And what was your mix for the day?
I mixed. What did I use? I used Super Crush Green.
Obviously.
A bag. Super Crush Green is always that. That's my armory. Full stop now. Super Crush Green. A bag of Thatcher's Green, Pro Thatcher's Green, and I think that was it. That was my two. Oh, I put a bit of F1 with it as well.
Yeah.
A bit of dark F1, just to darken it off, because it was quite clear late. To be honest, I had so much rain and stuff.
Yeah.
And that was it, and it was great. And fish positive, gram rigs, bolt, two decent droppers, and I was catching more than anybody on the pole. Anybody, and a lot of that was probably down to like your presentation of your float, dropping it in, holding it correctly, and Gary come on the pole to my left because he seen me catching, he couldn't catch, and he gambled to stay on the feeder, because on that feeder you just think any minute now it's going to start happening.
Yeah.
And he did actually have a nice run in the last couple of hours. Was on the pole, but I ended up beating him by, I don't know, like a few ounces, I think.
Were they bigger fish that he was catching on the feeder? Like when they did eventually rock up?
Yeah, and he was moaning all the time about these liners. So it didn't. He had them fish in his peg all day, and they were very hard. But the only thing I wish I'd have done is probably chucked a method feeder over the top.
Right.
But I was convinced that them fish weren't on the feeder. I think they were off the bottom.
Yeah.
With the easterly and that, probably put them off a bit. And then I spoke to another guy I know, Vince, and he was on the opposite side and he had exactly the same. He said the liners he would get was literally taking his rod off the rest of him. Yeah. And they were all skimmers. They just didn't feed properly.
No.
So anyway, I've ended up with 27 pound odd, and I got me section by default. And Matty Dawes had some big fish, and it was all. You look at the winning weights, the stamp of fish is what you needed, and I just don't think they were in every peg. You get an odd one, but they just didn't feel like where I was. They were on the pole line, they were on the feeder line, and you couldn't really catch them unless you'd have chucked the method out. And I spoke to a couple of people, and they said it's the same. You chuck the method out, they don't go round. You know,
you feel like it's right, but it doesn't actually work, sort of thing.
No, you think it will in them conditions, but it doesn't. But the actual venue fished amazingly well, considering like easterly wind, loads of rain. You know, it's been fished a lot recently, but yeah, it was great fishing. The amazing thing is, weirdly, you could hardly get a bite on. You could put worms in your ground bait, the fish would come over it, and you had a job to get a bite on a worm head.
Strange.
Weird. Single maggot by far, or single caster was the best bait. But putting worms in your ground bait
got them there.
Well, I don't know. It was a hard one to read, but it didn't make any. It certainly didn't.
Put them off.
It certainly did not put them off. And you just think, if I could just catch on a worm head, you would, but it was so much slower than like a maggot or a caster.
Yeah. That's some of the most frustrating fishing, isn't it? Where you sort of like, you know what you're doing is not wrong, but you can't figure out exactly what's dead right. Like whether worms were making that big of a difference, where that's why they were coming in, or whether it was purely the ground bait drawing them in, but worms wasn't hindering it.
They love ground bait there, and on that feeder, I honestly thought that if you just fished a nice little hex mesh feeder, plugged it with just neat ground bait, nothing else, with like single, double maggot on, they would be dragging the rod off the rest.
Yeah.
And they didn't. You just had the same thing. You would get an odd one. I mean, Gary Pook actually had a couple of fish like £2 plus in the tail. So his feeder's at the bottom, tip's gone round, he's hooked him in the tail. So they're obviously not. Just won't go on the bottom and settle. And I had the same, going back to like you said about the worms, I had the same thing down Whiteacres in October. I fished 2 festivals down there, which was the Drennan and the Garbolino. I drew on Jenny's Lake, 1 peg, I can't remember the 2 pegs I drew. The week of the Drennan, I put worm and ground bait in. Worms were absolutely a waste of time. Even though you were putting worms in, maggot on the hook was best. The following week, you can catch a fish, a chuck on worms doing exactly the same. And absolutely, it's mad how within a week you'd have a job to get a bite on worms, and the following week you get a bite every chuck on worms.
Yeah.
And when you can catch on worms, it's so much better. Normally better quality. You can catch several fish on the same bit of worms. Everything's just more and more efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely love. I wish it was like 45 minutes closer. I'd be there. I'd be there a lot.
Yeah. Does something like the Teams of 3 league that they run through? Like, I know obviously you fish tunnel, so it's probably a bit of a. If you're fishing tunnel one day and then that's the next day, it's a lot of driving it through winter, and it's a long league as well.
A lot of effort. You know, it's what we do at the end of the day. If you want to get into those competitions, especially with what I do, like you just said, like obviously fishing other competitions as well, and that sort of puts me on to the tunnel league that I've been fishing. You know, that's 10 matches. It's a bit of, a lot of commitment. I only normally fish 8. I missed the first 2. And that, again, for me, this year, is tunnels fished exceptionally well, considering the conditions and the rain sorts. And we've had Southwest All-Stars, which I fish for every year. We've won it again this year. That was me, Callum Dix, Andy Neal, and Aid Mansfield. Brilliant to fish that. And I won it individually, Jay. Get that?
Yeah, that was something. You got that in, but yeah, you did.
for me to win that individual, I won it before individual. That's like a very, it's sort of something to be very proud of.
Yeah, considering the standard of like angler who do that sort of fishing all the time, like tunnel, like obviously partridge is the other one, but like tunnel in that winter league, that's what they do. And the good thing about that league is, or the difficult thing about that league is, a lot of those guys have been fishing that same league for what, a decade now?
Years and years and years. Yeah, absolutely. It's a shame that Mike, obviously, lost Mike. Obviously, walking into the cafe, seeing him there is unfortunately no longer. But Sarah will make that just carry on, and he probably just carry on for many, many years to come.
Yeah. And
you can see that already. So, yeah, it's horrible not to see Mike there, because when you walk in, have a quick chat with him. He's always prepared to have a chat and a bit of a grizzle about things.
Yeah.
A bit like me, really. But anyway, that was that. And again, this year was groundbait. Talking about groundbaits again, that was so important. So important. Punching it out with a bread punch, little tiny nuggets, fishing on it, past it. It's great fishing. Caught loads of skimmers as well. And everybody catches. I've had like 10. And we're talking about tunnel bars. When you catch like 10 pound of silvers, that's a lot of silvers for a tunnel, because it is obviously an F1 venue.
Yeah.
But it was really, really good. Just trying to give you some tips on it, really.
I think that's one in itself, isn't it? Like during the winter, if you're like the importance of those silverfish, by feeding a bit of ground bait, you were catching, say, £10 of skimmers. Well, if £10 takes you from £40 into £50, or £50 into 60, all of a sudden that's the difference between midway in your section to top few in your section, isn't it?
The weights were ridiculous. Literally £6-7 would get you another 8 to 9 points in a 15-page section. You'd be like, if you were on the wrong end of it, you wanted to like murder someone on the way out. And if you were on the right end of it, it was like, oh yeah, brilliant. Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, there's nothing better in fishing, is there, coming on the right side of some really close results. Like where you've just done people. But obviously, when you're at the wrong end of that, it's horrible, isn't it? You're like, you beat yourself up, don't you?
Yeah. Well, I started off with green, Super Crush green, which obviously I got into.
Obviously.
Like everybody knows about that by now. I'll only tell you the truth. It's the truth. But I started using it at the start of the Winter League, and then I found that no matter how I mixed it just wouldn't bind enough. So if I wanted to get a little more down to the bottom, because there was some stockies like 12 ounces, and they come off the bottom. And then by the end of it, and this is the truth, I'm not lying, I started mixing it with Crust Expander.
Yeah.
Crust Expander is a little bit heavier and a bit stickier. And I mixed them two 50-50, and it was brilliant, because you could do whatever you wanted with it. You could make it into a little ball, which it would actually like go down because it was heavy and stay together. Or if you wanted to put it in loose, it was obviously no problem at all. And the last few times I've been out, I've actually used that mix because it's a little bit heavier. I fished where else have I been? I fished Acorn Fishery last Thursday in the silverfish match. My drawing ability is not great, I must admit. My drawing ability pretty pants at the minute. It's doing me head in because I just can't quite get there. I used that mix again. I had 24 pound of skimmers. And it was really weird on this fishery, Acorn, on the Snake Lake. This time of year, the silverfish there's tons of silverfish in here. The skimmers are very, very weird. You can't give them a lot of bait. But last Thursday, I could actually feed like 3/4 of a pot of loose ground bait and leave it. You couldn't go straight on it, but leave it. Pinkies on the hook, and it was brilliant. Every skimmer was like 12 ounces to a pound and a bit. And people say to me, well, how do you know? How do you like work that one out? Because normally you've been on here fishing these little like pellety, punch ground bait.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I do like feeding bait, and I really want to feed bait. And it was just one of those lines you think, well, that line's rubbish. It's not happening. Can I experiment with it? And that's what I do sometimes. And I remember putting like 3/4. I thought, sod it. I'm not going to put a ball in. I just put 3/4 of a pot loose in. Nothing else. And when I went on it, I just tapped in like 15 pinkies, pretty negative with the pinkies, admittedly, maybe 20. And straight away, it was obvious they were on it.
Yeah.
And then the other line, because I was obviously like fishing like 1 o'clock and 11 o'clock sort of thing. And then I just rotated the 2 lines. I even put like big pots of groundbait on loose, short line in the end. So that's how I sort of work at it sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
I fed over, I nearly ran out of bait in the end, so I fed like a kilo.
Nice.
And on here it's like
yeah,
kilo groundbait.
How you'd previously been doing it, you were probably thinking, oh, a kilo will be plenty sort of thing, whereas it sort of changed. But
Yeah. And that's what I do. If a line's not going great, you think, I'll tell you what, I'll just try some on that. And then you can fit that round your other your other lines if you like.
Yeah.
Where else have I been? Sheerwater, I went there 2 weeks ago. Had a little bit of luck on. Oh dear, I didn't write that on my Facebook page, but we'll have a chat about that. I'm running some matches every other week at Sheerwater, which is I've decided to run them to get people on the bank, to keep people interested, because it is, for us round in the southwest, to do long range feeder fishing on a big lake like that is pretty unusual. There is other venues like Chard and Durley, but that is a good venue. Lots of bream, some carp, and it's just nice to sit there and think when your rod goes round, it could be a £4 bream or it could be a £25 carp. Let's talk about that one really. What do I do? Well, Steve Jones, who's probably watching, he drew for me. I wasn't very happy with him. He drew me on the road bank, the end peg admittedly, but it's normally a weird area. It looks amazing, but you basically got the dam here, and now it was like that, and they're casting like that. They're nowhere near each other, but it's a real tough area.
Always feels a bit cut off a bit.
Yeah, just the fish don't seem to want to like settle there. But we had lots of rain. It was quite mild. It was a horrendous day. I mean, we had so much rain. It was a joke, as we all know. I took a bit of a gamble. I fished I fished 50 metres. Well, I put some bait in. So I put maggots in, I put some micros in, some sticky pellets, like krill and squid, a bit of corn, and a little bit of ground bait. I actually...
So very similar to how we did in your video that we filmed last year then?
Yes, the only thing I did, I think the only thing what I will talk about, probably people going there tomorrow, they'll probably batter me now if it works, but I put some bait in at 50 metres, some maggots, corn, some micros, some krill and squid stickies. Brown bait was just neat match method mix, even though it's natural, because it's just that sort of lake it just loves. Them fish there love that cloud. It draws them into your peg with that if you're on them. And I actually I probably fed a pint of bait, particles, and I thought I'm going to gamble here because it's a hard area. I literally just had a big cage on, and I just kept chucking it out probably 10 times. It was a count of about 8 where I was 7 or 8, and a count of 3 I would strike it out.
So just explain to people there, for people that don't do a lot of feeder fishing, so if you were to say a count of 8, what are you saying roughly that sort of depth is there?
It depends how you count. It was like 1, 2, 3, it's probably like 14, 15 foot deep. Yeah. With an ounce and a half bomb. So I count quite quickly, because otherwise I stop. I can't count properly if I do it slow. So I put some bait out, and then I decided, just had a gamble really. I thought, well, I need to try and drag some fish in my peg, try and make a carpet of bait on the bottom, because we all know bream. I think all fish love that carpet. Same principle of putting in loose ground bait, and I just cast a big cage out, probably like I said 10 times, struck it out, cast that again, struck it out before it hit the bottom, just trying to create a big area. And then I decided to fish 75 metres. I only put 2 feederfuls out at 75 metres. Anyway, and I ended up winning the match with 80 odd pounds, but I did have a little bit of luck. I felt like I fished a good match, and it's Sheerwater, and you'll probably find this in some of your fishing that you do. Fishing a big water like that, sometimes fishing 2 lines can be very, very confusing, because sometimes you think you're at the wrong place at the wrong time. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I don't like doing it. Normally I like to fish 1 line and get them, but sometimes it's Sheerwater, no matter what you do, they're not there. You've got to just cast somewhere else. But that day it all worked out. I could go from the baited line after a couple of hours, get a fish, 2 fish, then go long and get 2 fish. It was like all right. I did have a 20 pound 6 ounce ghosty. That fought amazing. It was one of them fish where as soon as I hooked it, it's come straight to the top and it's wallowing, and it's like 50 yards out, and it's like your rod's like whoa,
like a big bream, just
like a massive bream. I'm like, I've got to go curl with this. So I took the cliff off. It did take me to the cliff. I managed to take the bell arm off and take the cliff off, and it fought so hard. And it was one of them fish. It nods in, all of a sudden it's like the line's gone over its dorsal fin, and it's like oh, and then you're back out to 30-40 yards.
Yeah.
Anyway, eventually I got it in. It was a 20 pound. I've never seen a ghosty out there before. It was a ghosty common. It was immaculate, and it went 20 pound 6. But
nice.
Let's talk about the next bit. Caught a few more breams, doing all right. Andy Power's next door to me as well, so obviously we know how good he is. I'm sort of staying in front of him. I thought that's the main objective today anyway, because the guy next to him packed up because he was having problems with his braid and his reels. So give Andy another. That's the sort of luck you need, innit? Which I don't get, obviously, Jake, until I had this happen. So I've cast out. Sometimes, not very often, it's Sheerwater. You'll be following your feeder down after casting. Sometimes you'll get a great big bite like that. Sometimes the carp, because they do lift off the bottom there, they might follow it down and grab your hook bait. It doesn't happen. I've had it happen like twice, and they're normally great big ones.
Yeah.
And I've had this, and it's gone all slack. And I thought, leave it, and then your rod's just doing that, so you know it's on. So I'm like struck, got another carp on. I thought, well, that's a major bonus today. Got like 10 bream, a 20 pound carp. Now I'm playing another carp. So I got it in. Shock leader's come through the eyes, gone down onto the reel, and I'm thinking, right now I can pick the rod up. I know I'm only sort of 10 yards out. Pick the rod up, feeder's come out the water. I've got no fish on it. I'm like, what's going on here? So I've got someone else's. I've got a line.
Oh, you've hooked
someone else's line.
Yeah.
Right, but it's got a fish on it. Now, when I was playing this fish, I'm thinking, and Andy Powers is like, hey, what have you got on? I said, I don't know, but it's big. It's massive. Like, it's literally, the weight is ridiculous. I know it's in the mouth because you can tell by the way it's nodding. And I managed to. I've had to get over the line, and I've got a fish on. So then I've come back. It's only about 2 or 3 meters. I've got it. It's been a carp setup. The leader, the weight, what holds the weight on, what they're called.
Yeah, like a lead clip.
That's it, lead clip and all that. And there's a carp on the end. So I'm like, put the carp. I'm like, well, what do you do? So I'm like, well, thanks for coming. I'll take that today.
Yeah, you wound it in.
No. So I put it in the net, and Powers is grizzled a little bit, and I'm like, well, what would you have done? It's no different to like being on a lake and attaching yourself to someone else's rig. It's one of them, isn't it?
Yeah.
So anyway, there's still some line going out. So I'm thinking that's obviously where the carp angler snapped off, the fish is caught up, etc., etc. So I've started winding it around me hand, and I can see the line going like to the right, and I'm like thinking, well, this line's obviously snapped off and left a big trail down into the to my right.
There wasn't another
All of a
fish.
sudden it's like that. I'm now playing another cart, hand line another cart, right? Eventually got it in. It's had a great big XR ICS method feeder. Yeah, that fish was 18 pound. I didn't weigh that fish. I actually put it back.
Very good of you.
It actually had a yellow bandon stood in its mouth. I was convinced
it was one of yours.
Someone on that match had hooked that trailer, snapped off, and then obviously I hooked the trailer, but basically I was playing £40 a carp at one time. 2 fish. So yeah,
unbelievable.
I mean that's just the sort of things that happen to me. Luckily not in the matches that you really need it to happen.
A less honest man would have weighed them both in though, Des. So you've done well there. You just took 50% of them.
Yeah, I put the smaller one, but
you had them both in your net. Put the smaller one back.
No, I did put them both in the net, but I let the big one go. Not the 20 pounder because that was like hooked properly, but the other one I let. Yeah. So I was dead straight with everybody. I've said, like, because I was running the match as well. It's all like, oh god, I don't need this. Why don't it just be in the mouth?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that was good. Bandham's on the hook.
Still Banoffee City.
Banoffee City.
Yeah.
Banoffee. Yeah, doing it in the liquid, and just like putting a bayonet through rather than banding them.
Yeah.
Double loading the XR. I fished the medium XR. And like I said on the video we done, Jake, that one, if you're not great at casting, a medium XR, you can cast that absolutely miles.
Yeah.
You know, for me, transferring the weight with the ground bait on it and the 45 grams, I can make that blast out like 80, 90 meters quite easily.
Yeah.
You know, for me, I'm not the greatest at casting in the world, but if I put a big, large XR on, loaded up, I find that a little bit more difficult to cast.
Not quite as aerodynamic or whatever the reason is.
And anyone out there that does long range feeder fishing, you'll find that if you just bring your feeder size down, and sometimes even like less weight, because what you've got to remember is you're putting weight around it with the bait, the ground bait and the pellets.
Yeah. And
the XR 45 to me, medium, I can make that work.
What rod is it you're using to do that?
12.6 Distance Master, 80 grams. 80 grams for me. I've tried heavier one. Yeah, I can fish the 100, 120s, but the 80 for me, casting, playing fish, the actual length of the rod for me personally just works amazingly.
Yeah.
And I think it does for a lot of people. I mean, 12.6 is the ultimate distance, you know, the length of rod that people can cast correctly with, I think.
Yeah.
When you start fishing 13s, 14s, unless your technique is very, very good, you don't reach the distances.
And the weight of the feed, like you're saying there, 45 gram, obviously the bait on it, you're probably not quite compressing those rods how you need to do it. Like obviously like Mark Bartlett, who's used to that sort of thing, he just does it, doesn't
easy.
it? Yeah.
And the thing is with people like him, it's just effortless.
Yeah.
You just think, well, what was that all about? And it goes like 125 yards.
But that's years and years of distance, like chucking distance, isn't it? It's just getting the technique that you home in, don't you, on it?
Yeah, he's been fishing with like dirty, great big carp rods with like 3.5 ounce test curve rods. I can't even cast them things. They're horrific.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like picking up a scaffold bar with a reel on it. I just hate it. I honestly. But I don't do it. So if I went out and practiced it,
that's what it's all about, isn't it? Practice.
But yeah, it's been really good fishing. Really frustrating for me at the moment. I think my ground baits are right, my baits are right. I'm just not getting that peg, bit of luck that you need to win like the big matches.
Yeah.
And talking about big matches, Zoe, my partner, is now qualified for the Capital Catch final.
Yeah, 30 grand. Unbelievable.
30 grand. So, and it's her birthday today, so happy birthday to her.
Happy birthday, Zoe.
So, yeah. Hopefully, so I'll be able to sit behind her in the final. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. First innovation, Adam Rumble, Lewis Porter. Get that one in. Yeah, so if anybody out there, obviously I've done a bit of promotional stuff for that competition. It's a great competition. What's that mean? Oh, she's doing that to me. I don't know what that means. Don't talk about that. I'd love a cup of tea, please. Yeah, so that's going to be a great competition in May in Cobb House. I think, talking about that competition, the way it sold out that quickly, I've heard all sorts of things on the bank. I know it's not sort of about Sonubaits, but some people are saying, "Oh, I don't agree with it," and I'm like, "Well, it's what it is." At the end of the day,
it's brilliant. Like the thing is with it, obviously there was that when it came out. The thing about it is, there are a lot of people, probably myself included, that don't necessarily have the time to go and chase the big money qualifiers, or because of like the regularity I go fishing, if I decide what I'm going to fish throughout the year are just qualifiers, I've done it in years gone by where you do it and you're only going fishing once a fortnight and it's always a qualifier, and you might win your lake or win your section, but you're £50 off winning the match. And in those matches, even though you've walked away with an envelope, it's a failure to not qualify. So you get to the end of the year and you sort of think, well, I've won nothing, or I've not achieved anything throughout the year, because even though I've done well, won a lake or won a section or whatever, framed in those matches, it's still a failure to not qualify, because ultimately that's the goal of a big money qualifier. Yeah. So this capital catch match, which is starting off as one match throughout the year, but it might become multiple, gives another big match that people that don't have the time necessarily to fish lots of qualifiers, all of a sudden you can put, I don't know, even if you just decided to put one qualifier's entry, like 35 quid or 50 quid on tickets, all of a sudden you've got the opportunity without doing that. But then the people that do fish those qualifiers, who are probably the ones that grumble a little bit because they, without the opportunity to fish a qualifier, they're probably narrowing their chances in some situations. But yeah, you've got more of an opportunity to be in that final without having to spend the time doing it. But then it's an extra match in the calendar, isn't it? It's another something. The biggest
thing people have ever said to me is like, Des, they would love to get into a final like that, to have a chance of winning that amount of money.
Yeah.
And they'll never get, not being nasty, they probably would never get into the final because, like you said, the time, the money, the effort, and everything else. But that competition opens it up. Which I know some people will say, "Oh no, I don't think it's right. I don't think it's wrong." Some people. I think a lot of people agree with it. I think the numbers stack up to how many people agree with it.
The fact that the tickets. So I think that the tickets came out. It was either on a Saturday night or a Sunday night. I was driving, and I basically thought, I'll grab some tickets when I get home. Say that again.
Are you allowed to get tickets?
I think I was allowed. It was never really said that I wasn't, so I was gonna try it. But I think if I'd have got in, because obviously I'm very good mates with everybody, it'd have been seen as a bit dodgy because they're all my mates.
It's not dodgy. It's
well, exactly. It'd have been just as random. But this is how undodgy it was, because I thought, I'll get some tickets when I get home, and they'd sold out by the time I'd got home. I was on a bit of a long drive, and they'd sold out, and so I was like, that's how popular it was. It literally was a couple of hours, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely mad, but it's what it is. At the end of the day, you're in it to win it, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. And
anyway,
good luck to Zoe.
I'm hoping I can sit behind Zoe.
Fair enough. I'm sure as long as you can do a bit of Facebook Live and a few interviews while you're at it.
I think it'd be quite nice for me to sit behind her, like doing a bit like coaching. I better not say it, coaching uncoachable. I better not bring the uncoachable side of it in.
No, Zolt's watching.
Is he?
Yeah, sir.
He's got me some new. He's ordered me some new pants, Zolt.
Right.
Yeah, some Preston pants.
Very nice.
Summer. I don't know what he's trying to say, but anyway. Yeah. So, but what else have I got coming up? I've got Stafford Moor next week. I've got a Silverfish Festival, which I fish every year. Nice. That's going to be. Hopefully, the weather is going to settle down a bit. So like I said, the weather's been absolutely horrific. Not sure what's going to happen down there. That could, if it's anything like the previous years, it will be maggots, casters, worms, possibly some pellet fishing. Never know. You never know whether it's going to be pellets or natural baits. It's a strange one. I think a lot of the venues I fish over the years, a lot of it has gone from pellet to natural.
Yeah.
All of a sudden pellets have come back in for some unknown reason. Like they have it.
Strange. It goes through cycles, doesn't it?
Yeah. Meadowlands was a classic. I think like they weren't catching nothing on pellets, and then all of a sudden, someone catches on pellets. They all start introducing pellets, and everybody's then they goes pellet mad.
Yeah. I think that happens at like your tunnels and your partridges as well, doesn't it? Where like through the winter, like you'll be catching on pellets towards the end of autumn, and people decide, right, it's maggot time, switch to maggots, and all of a sudden like the fish switch onto it, and that's what you catch on, and then it it sort of follows when people start changing what they're feeding more, and the fish just switch on to it, don't they?
The last round at Tunnel, I do peg 5 on extension. We had all this rain, got there. It was quite a nice day, and I've tried it before. I try it not every round, depends where you draw. I thought, well, I need to just do some expand. I've done some 4mm Pro expanders up. I always take them with me because you never know. And I actually got some fishery 4s and soaked them up, like just an hour before I wanted them.
Yeah.
And I started, literally put a little ball of micros in, went on expander and caught a fish straight away. And I had 120 pound that day. It fished brilliantly, and I probably caught 90 pound on pellets.
Yeah, nice.
It's hooking one, throwing like 4 mils. Tried to keep them coming on 4 mil. I actually done a video with Jamie the other day. It was exactly the same. You had to just now and again put a little ball of micros in to get them fired up again.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite right to just keep feeding 4s. And I think it's on the verge now. I know we've had a couple of cold mornings, but it was on the verge of literally going to like hard pellet.
Yeah.
Very close to the like, oh, hello.
Yeah. Few weeks of like this. I don't know what it's like there, but it's
it will
nice.
Be hard pellet very shortly. You know, meat as well. There was a few fish caught on meat in Tunnel on the last round. I actually tried it, I didn't catch on it. But pellets was massive. And then all the previous rounds, it was a waste of time. It was literally have a quick 10 minutes on pellets and you're back on maggots and crankbait.
Yeah.
And the last round, it was like just amazing within a week.
Yeah.
This is where you've got to be very, very open-minded, I think, where you go to, how things can change very, very quickly.
Having the options there ready to make the change if it,
I've got people ask me in the shop as they're going down White Acres next week for the first festival, and they're like, well, what do you reckon? I'm like, mate, should I take maggots? Should I take casters? I'm like, you need to take both.
Yeah.
It costs you money, but you need both, because if you go somewhere and the conditions are right, you might even be able to catch shallow.
Yeah.
There was quite a lot of fish caught shallow at Tunnel on the last round, and the water is just still cold, but they just come up, and that's going to happen on a lot of F1 waters, possibly even some carp waters, with heavily stocked waters. It's a bit of a mind game now for the next few weeks. What's going to happen with the weather, and just bear in mind, don't forget to set a shallow rig up.
Yeah.
Don't think it'll be pellets just yet, but maggots.
Good.
Possibly a bit of caster work if you've got down White Acres, draw the right areas.
Yeah. Definitely worth keeping in mind. All right, should we move on to a few questions?
I forgot about the questions.
Let's just. Right, so let's have a little look through. So I'll say a few hellos to a few people. So we've got Paul Williams on, Steve Hansler, Matt Linforth, who's a Moorlands regular. Mike McMullen is watching from Philippines.
Mike, you
lucky bugger.
Although he's just got married, I think, and he just had a baby.
Oh, I'm not too sure, but he's
gone over there to get over it.
Maybe that's honeymoon. Carl Stather, we've got Jose Diaz watching from the Netherlands. Zolt's on, Stephen Piner, Steve Hansler again.
Zolt needs to get edited. That's what he needs to do.
Right, so let's go through a few questions. So we have got in the warmer months, would you use the same floats for slapping that you would for mud lines?
Yes. Well, there's carp shallows, which is probably one of the most popular floats for that. So they're really good for shallow with pellets, casters, worm, whatever, meat. They're just an all-round little good, real strong float. You can't really break them unless it smashes against your pole. It goes through the Norfolk reeds.
Don't even think then. I think it breaks your pole before it breaks the float with them carp shallows.
The eye won't come out. You'd have to literally stand on it. I give them floats a right.
And they're a glass stem, so they're so durable, aren't they?
They're self-cocking. I think if you stick with that, a carp shallow, 4B12 is probably the all-rounder for fishing shallow and up against banks, islands and things like that. That is a great float when you're fishing lines from 015 for F1 main lines up to 019. We got the new ones that come out last year called the XSs. So you've got the Edge XS. They're like a 2.5 hollow bristle. Now, when you're fishing like real heavy lines, what you'll find with a carp shallow, for example, if you start fishing 021, 023 main lines, the line's like heavy and it sort of kicks it off to the side. With an Edge XS, because they've got a thick carbon, I think it's fiberglass bristle, and a nice thick top, with that heavy line, they just sit dead straight. It doesn't sort of sit like that, which is horrible. You don't want that. You want your float sitting nice and straight. So carp shallow for your normal F1s, carp 015, 017, 090 main lines. When you want to go, when I go to places like Topham Manor, other venues around the country, and I'm fishing with real thick, strong main lines, 021, 023, because of the wear and tear, try the Edge XS floats. Yeah. Because they sit so good. You can fish the XSs anyway if you want to. If you prefer a thicker bristle, there's no problem at all in using the XS for any of your carp fishing. But I prefer the carp shallow because I can do a bit of F1, because I do a lot of different fishing. I use a lot of the carp shallows because I fish for F1s and carp. But yeah, they're the floats. They are proper good. Them two floats really cover you through a lot of your edge fishing, and you can also fish shallow with them as well. No problem at all.
Excellent. Yeah, your camera's doing some bits there, isn't it? I don't know whether it's just my.
What's going on?
I don't know whether it's just my screen, but you've got some fancy like tracking something or other on, haven't you? It's following you about.
West, isn't it? We're so far advanced down here.
So far advanced.
Oh dear! If I was left to set this up, mate, you'd still be waiting for me to come on.
Yeah, it'd have been like that first time where I had to hold the fort for half an hour.
Are you there? No, I forgot about it.
Rob Warwick says, Des, I always struggle with getting my groundbait mix right. Is there a simple ratio I can use? Like, for example, 1 pole cup of dry mix to 1 cup of water. Like, what's the go-to? And I think on our bags it says it, doesn't it? Like, as a rough guide or a starting point.
Yeah. Well, basically, if you've got a 2 kilo bag of groundbait, like match method mix, so that in there is 6 pints of groundbait. So a kilo of dry groundbait is basically it's a 3-pint maggot tub, literally full up to the top. So if you put 3 pints of dry groundbait in a bucket and add a pint of water, you will get that groundbait it might just be a tad dry, but it's a great starting point. So put it in there, mix it up with a pint of water. Like I said, if you want to do that whole bag, that would be just over around about 2 pints to start with. Yeah. So it's a 3 pint maggot tub of groundbait to 1 pint of water. Mix it around. It doesn't matter what groundbait you use in the Sonubait range. If you start with that, it's a great. And what I do is I would mix it like that. Then I would riddle it. It's really important, all you guys out there, use a riddle, because it's the quickest way. Otherwise, you're messing around with it. So groundbait in a bucket, 3 pints, 1 pint of water, mix it around, it'll go all horrible. You'll be thinking, God almighty, it's gone like concrete. Don't worry about it. Mix it around, put it through a riddle, and then add your water afterwards. That's what I do. If you try and add water to when it's gone all like a big brick in the bucket, it ain't the same. So do that, riddle it, and then add a little bit more water. And sometimes you don't even have to riddle it. You don't have to riddle it again, and that makes it really, really fluffy. Now it gets how you want it. So that's the best advice I can give you, really. Like I said, 3 pints of groundbait, 1 pint of water to start with any groundbait. Then you're sort of 80-90% there. Yeah,
it'll only ever really be a tweak away, won't it, from getting it? A lot of the time it'll be banged on by just doing it that way, especially for the method feeder, won't it? Because
2 groundbaits, which is crust expander and super crust green, which you will have to put more water with, because it does soak up the water. Crust expander, I've not done the ratio on it, but I bet it's probably 3 pints of groundbait to close to 2. And it's the amazing thing with that crust expander and super crush green, you can't really mess it up.
No. I saw something funny. Did you see Rich Chapman had flooded his house at the weekend? And and Jamie's response was, chuck a couple of bags of super crush expander down and it'll soon soak it up. Yeah, that a pipe had burst and he's walked through his front door and there was that much water on the floor everywhere. And Jamie said that.
What a nightmare. What a nightmare. But like when I've mixed super crush green up, or I do the super crush and the crush expander, I would say, I've not done it, but I reckon you could put 3 pints of Groundbait, probably nearly 2 pints of water.
Yeah, I'd say easily.
And if you think, oh, that's too wet, just put a little bit more dry Groundbait with it.
Yeah.
And it don't go like lumpy, because it is like an expander Groundbait. It's so easy to mix. But with with that super crush green on its own, it does dry out. It's probably one of those Groundbaits that dries out very, very quickly in the wind and in the sun. You've got to have like a little tub with you and just keep adjusting it if you want to.
Yeah.
But I would say crust expander and super crush green, I bet it's 3 pints of water to 2 pints of Groundbait. But anything else in the range, just do 3 pints of Groundbait to 1 pint of water. And the Thatchers, basically gold water to mix Thatchers on its own, that would be one of those to 1 pint of water.
Yeah.
That would be perfectly mixed, but make sure. I always say to people, put it through a riddle. A lot of people still don't use riddles. If you use a drill, you don't really need to use a riddle sometimes. But if you don't, put it through a riddle. Some of the things I've seen on the bank, and they're like bristling about their Groundbait, and I'm like, mate, you need to use a riddle. Yeah. That's horrific.
Just helps distribute the water better, doesn't it? Because any lumps are just areas where there's more water.
Horrible.
So
it's horrible.
Yeah.
So that's the best advice I can give you for like mixing Groundbaits up and getting them dead right.
Excellent. Pete Carver has said, I noticed quite a lot of other anglers use a back shot when pole fishing, but Des doesn't seem to. What's his thinking behind this?
Pete, that's what they're all about. Muscles. No, I've been ripped in from Andy May several hundred times now about why don't I use a back shot. I get back shot, and I've also seen anglers out there that use back shots, and when I've done some coaching, and they're striking at a lot of false indications, because obviously the back shot is like your float's there's your back shot. If your back shot goes down a little bit, that float will sink, and it's like a false bite.
Yeah.
And I get it, but the whole principle of it is, Pete, is basically you can hold the pole right over top of your float. The back shot, wherever you put your back shot, you can have it 6 inches from your float, you can hold the line down. Now if it was a windy day and you're trying to tow, you've got to have your pole over here to control your float. The back shot, you can still have it up here. That's the whole principle of it in my mind, that you can hold it right over top of your float. And what I find with a lot of guys, Pete, is they do side winding strikes, which I hate. When I Zoe's one of them. Oh,
the hell.
I've never flat round the Euros, let me tell you. and that will help you. Having a back shot on there and holding your pole right over top of your float will help you strike straight up. When you've got the toe going and you're holding your pole, especially if you've got a longish line, you always seem to go sideways like that. And believe you me, you pull out so many fish by striking sideways.
Yeah.
So try and strike up. And that back shot helps you hold that pole tip right over top of your float. So if it's towing, you can use. I used to use back shots. I have used back shots years ago when I fished some of the big finals, team finals, on the River Nene. And we used to use an SSG back shot.
Yep.
And used to have it like maybe a foot above your float, and you drop the back shot in the water like that, and you could and your float would go through like that. Anybody who go stick float fishing, they would understand that. And the line control was basically that. So you wouldn't have the line out the water, because the Nene was always windy. Yep. It was always a bit of a pain to get the present, or it was a downstream wind. Downstream wind, which was an absolute nightmare. And having that big shot in the water, you could just control it all the way down. See that, like that? Control it down your river. It was amazing. It's horrible when you struck, because you get like that.
Yeah, you're striking against a big shot, aren't you?
Yeah, you didn't have a fish on, everything would be doing like that. You think, well, God Almighty! But the presentation when you were fishing with hemp and baits like that was amazing. That's the prince of it, people.
Yeah. No, I've talked about it a lot, even on.
Remember,
yeah, so that's the reason you don't, isn't it? Because you're happy to keep your pole above your float. You just using like stopping the wind by being strong and holding it, aren't you? That's the principle.
I have thought about it a few times when the toe, especially when the toe is going the same way as the wind. That's when I think a back shot will come into play massively. So if you've got the wind and the toe going that way, and you're trying to keep your pole over here, right, and then you strike, and it's horrible. But yeah, I can't remember the last time I actually used a back shot. So yeah, but if you get on with them, I know they work well, especially on snake baits when it toes and skims.
Yeah,
that's when they definitely help.
Yeah. Frank Shepherd, Des, if you had the choice of just 3 feeders, what types and weights would you use? It's quite an open question, this, because is it method feeder?
Give us a little bit of is that method feeder fishing?
Yeah,
I would say it's probably method feeder.
Well, let's go through. So if in terms of method sort of style fishing, if you could just go 3. So if you're on the bank, you've sat at your peg, it's a pretty typical, I don't know, 25 metre chuck, let's say. I don't know, that's maybe like your Manor Farm chucks, wherever else, that sort of thing. If you could only have 3 feeders on your tray, and the size, so it might be that it's 20 gram or 30 gram, what 3 feeders would it be? So like a medium method, go.
Best, my go-to feeder would be the ICS flatbed method in a small. That feeder for me has caught me so many fish. Since obviously we've sort of messed around with it a little bit, we took the bars, we spread the bars out in the middle. That feeder for me, it will never get beat for what it does. You can put ground bait around it, you can put pellets around it 50-50, you can double load it, you can single load it. You know, I've been to Italy fishing, come up with a little thing there where it was like literally, it's all sorts of stories that I've spoke about before, but that feeder for me is the best all-rounder. So I would definitely have one of them on 20 gram for F1's Carasio, and carp if I can get away with it, but a 30 gram is the all-rounder. You know, if you're just not, if you're not great at casting, you want something that's just going to pin to the bottom, you're not going to move it, then a 30 gram. 20 gram if you can get away with it. So you definitely get less hook pulls with a 20 gram. Pellet feeder, don't care what anyone says, on its day, a pellet feeder can be absolutely deadly. If you go to venues where you can't use ground bait, pellet feeder comes in on its own.
Yeah.
For me, the venues I go to, ground bait is very, very important. So that's where the flatbed normally because you just stick with the flatbed because of the ground bait situation. And then it's got to be the XR. Since the XR version, for me, Sheerwater.
And again, mentioned earlier, a medium in the XR as well.
Medium, yeah, medium's a fantastic size. Because it's got that shield all the way, that wall, you can mould it in. That's no different to Powers next to me 2 weeks ago fished an inline flatbed at Sheerwater, where I fished an XR.
Yeah.
And I just prefer an XR. In my mind, I can double load that, so I can put a skin in that bottom bit. I know it's not coming out, and I know it doesn't come out because I come back in sometimes, it's still in there.
Yeah.
And then you can adjust that for how firm you put your bait in, which is obviously getting your ground bait right as well. Max method baits, we all know how good that is. Get a few of those sticky krill and squids in there, that helps. If I'm fishing distance, 45 grams for me, and then 20 and 30 depending on where I go. I find it very, very difficult to go anywhere in the country and not fish a flatbed method.
Yeah.
Because I've just caught so many fish on it. If I go to Stafford Moor, Carasio fishing, you cannot beat that feeder. You can have the ground bait melting off, which is really important sometimes, or you can like double load it. You can, you know, put it on really hard. The XR for me is distance and deeper water, but I know, I mean, we sell thousands of shop, so everybody loves it because they got that. I think it's for a lot of people, if they're not that positive and not that, what's the word? I'm trying to think of the word I'm looking for, really. If they can't get their ground baits quite right and their pellets quite right, they can't quite understand it. That's where them XR comes in. It takes all the confusion out because they got that, because of that wall all the way round.
Yeah.
That gives them the confidence, is the word, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. It gives them the confidence that they can compact that on there and stay in the feeder for X amount of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Perfect.
Definitely 100%. You know, the flatbed method, ICS, XR for distance, stroke deep water, Sheerwater, Bollingtons, places like that, and then a pellet feeder. You have to have a pellet feeder in your armoury. You know, sometimes there's people that go to Sheerwater and fish just a pellet feeder.
Yeah.
But I like that ground bait. I like to have the variation of ground baiting. I've always had, because I know how deadly it is.
Yeah.
And where I live in my area, ground bait comes into our fishing so much. You wouldn't, you know, some venues you wouldn't catch about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
Brilliant.
that'd be my feeder choices.
Lovely stuff. Tony said he went to the big one this weekend. Don't normally go. Lacking match fishing. It was more of a carp fest. Is there any reason why Sonu and Preston wasn't there? That's been since sort of COVID, hasn't it? Not like obviously that was the first sort of year that we didn't go, and I think as a company they just sort of decided, not to do.
It's one of them, Tony. Things change, and and it's quite nice for me because I got a voice after 2 days of being there. I used to lose my voice, which was quite good for a lot of people. Who knew me. It's just one of them things, though. It is a business decision. At the end of the day, it costs an awful lot of money to go there. Preston don't sell direct to the public when we go there, so the actual, Sonu and Preston have never really sold to the public because we do support the shops as much as possible. And I think that is a really, really important thing as well.
That it became that, didn't it?
Yeah, and we've always said, without our local shops, as a fishing industry, it's not good. It's not good. The kids. How many people come into this shop? They're out with their grandkids. They come in. They want to take up fishing. Them shops aren't there. You're going to miss all that for the future of fishing. And it is just a business. I didn't get involved in that, obviously, but that was the decisions that the guys, the managers and stuff took because they just felt it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It's a shame. It is a shame because I think it's for you guys to go there, see all the products in one big area.
And also, it's always good, isn't it, for us to be there having a chat with the people that we don't always get to see, or like put a face to a name, isn't it, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was more.
But yeah, I mean, I didn't go to the show. Obviously, I don't know how many. I think it was very, very busy. But like you said, Tony, there was maybe a lot of carp. I did have a look at the stands, and there wasn't like a lot of the match brands there. What I've seen of it. So yeah, it's just one of them. I suppose it's just the way of the future. I think.
Yeah.
To be perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Would you like to put any light on it, Jay?
No, I think you've summed it up quite well there. I think it was a business thing. Like people, it's above
Jake's
even
looking
us.
for a pay rise, ladies and gentlemen. So that's
if that stands there, we're getting paid for. That's not going to happen.
No, seriously, it's just a decision that the management have made for the future, really.
Exactly that. Stewie's watching, so is he not working today?
Well, he probably should be.
Simon, is this local Simon to you? What's the best approach for Wyatt's at the Cobb House Fishery? Asking for a friend, he's put.
Oh, Simon, is he in the final? Zoe, have a look on Facebook. Is he in the final, Simon? I'm not sure yet, Simon. I should be there. Practicing with Zoe. All I can say is I went there and done some of the promotional stuff with Capital Catch. It's quite deep, that lake, and I think Guy, who now owns Cobb House, is a fantastic guy. I think it's going to be a great final. He will make sure that's a great final, Guy. He is switched right on. It's an absolute pleasure to talk to him, to be honest. And he will make that fishery, I think, one of the best in the country. He's already put some stockies in there. I've seen some on Facebook the other day. Like £2 fish, absolutely stunning fish.
Nice.
It is quite deep, and I will say, Simon, I think when I went, it was probably 7 foot deep. I think I could just about get it on a Preston Superior top kit.
And it's deep in the deep in the edges, from what I can remember. I fished a match on there.
And he's going to keep the water level up. Because at the moment it looks stunning. The water's up, right by the grass, where I think that lake does drop down. But he's said that I'm going to keep the water up. It's good for the fish. It just looks stunning. I honestly, first impressions, I think there's going to be quite a lot of hard pellet fishing.
Yep.
So I think the fishing will be good. And it'll be down to who gets the short line and the edge line right. And that could be a number of things. They've changed the rules. You can have 2 kilos of ground bait. So he reckons she's going to win it. Well, what of that? We'll put the hat round and right the other way for that one. I hope she does win it. Give me back some of the money she borrowed off me. And then I think it'll be down to, because of the depth of water, there could be, and it's in May. May's a funny old time, Jake, isn't it?
Right on the cusp of, like, could it be mega? Could it be a little bit iffy, like difficult? Could they decide to start going on a bit of a spawn or thinking about it?
May's that time of year, isn't it? When you can walk out your house one morning, you're walking around in a t-shirt, or you come out your house one morning and you think, Jesus Christ, I've got to get my hoodie back on.
Exactly.
And that will be some shallow fishing. It could be some mugging. But I think first impressions of what I seen the other day will be long pole hard pellets for sure, I think, and then it'll be short and down the edge, and that will depend on what you think bait wise. I said there's 2 kilos of ground bait allowed, so I think a lot of the anglers will be attacking the edges with ground bait. And who knows, it could be not as used meat. So
fair enough.
The ground bait, what ground bait will I recommend? Ooh, I was going to Cobb House.
Some big fish.
There's a lot of big fish in there. I'd probably be going for what I used to use a lot is where is it?
Match method with some chunky fish.
No, I wouldn't be, Jake. I would be going for my old favourite, which is chunky fish.
Why have you knowed me and I said chunky fish, but I just said add a bit of chunky fish in some match method?
That's what I'd be using. Chunky fish, and I used to use a bit of match method bits with it, didn't I?
Guys.
Well, I don't know. What did you use?
I said match method mix. I said match method mix with some chunky fish, and you've said no, chunky fish with some match method mix.
It was the opposite way round, didn't it?
Do you have? That's where I've been going wrong, putting it in the bucket the wrong way round.
You've been putting it in the wrong bucket the wrong way round. See. So that's what I'd be using on that venue, I reckon, because I just think it's because you've got all sorts of different sizes of fish. There's a lot. I was when we went and done some filming. We actually caught quite a lot of stockies, like pound fish, pound half fish. So there's quite a few of them in there. There's no silvers, which is going to be interesting. Quite a lot of natural baits you could probably get away with as well.
Fair enough.
All right.
Yeah.
But I will be checking, Simon, if you're in the final. Not sure whether he is or not. He is.
Yeah, he is in the final.
Oh, Simon, don't start asking me questions like that. There's a guy in the final called Michael. Yeah, he messaged me the other night. He said, "Can I come up with you and Zoe when you're practicing and get some tips?" I'm like, Simon, it's not Simon. Like, what? This is like a 30 grand final.
Get some tips.
No, he won't mind. He's sort of saying, Well, Zoe's got all the time in the world. She's fishing all the time. Last time she went fishing was last July. Like, I think everybody thinks that Zoe goes fishing like 5 times a week. No.
Only 3 times a week.
No, she's here working, burning the crust.
Fair enough. Right.
Any more questions, Pete?
Yeah, we've got plenty we'll get through. So
anyway, anybody out there, hello, if you just joined.
Yeah, so Jason has said, just want to say thank you for the F1 Fishing Made Simple video at Tunnel Barn Farm. You made some great tips, took everything on board and managed to win his club match on house pool a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's done. Get in.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, no. Yeah, thanks, mate. I appreciate it. I get lots of messages saying thanks, and yeah, it means a lot. It means a lot, not just to me and the cameraman, but to the company as well.
Yeah.
Because obviously doing all these videos and stuff, it's a lot of commitment. It's a lot of finance, and we need that. I think we need that. It drives us along, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's good.
Working with Zol is an absolute nightmare.
yeah. So that makes it worthwhile.
Getting them comments helps me get through the pain of it all. Let me tell you.
And the best thing about it is like the fact that what you're showing is what you're doing, and the fact that people are then putting it into practice and getting the results, which is exactly what it's for, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm very lucky that I'm a full-time angler. Obviously, we do lots of stuff with the companies, but it's because of that we can give you more information. It's very difficult for me because I go to lots of different venues, and every venue's different. But I think for a lot of people, that's what they do every week in a club match. They go to all these different venues and try and take on board like you have, Jason, and it works out. I get a lot of messages saying, "Desert just won me first match or just framed." That's, to me, it's the guys that get back and say, "I've just framed in my first match and I've done what the information," and that is massive, I think, because it gives you the confidence to go again and do it again.
Yeah, definitely.
Better angry at the end of the day, making it more difficult for us to try and beat you all.
Yeah.
But I'm getting on a bit now, so it might, I'll be out of the equation soon. So.
Rob Driscoll, following on from our previous Q&A, he's now got himself a padded, the heated seat. He's warm as toast, brilliant. 2 weeks ago, I caught him. Yeah, Jason said it a couple of weeks ago. He was catching on 4mm soft pellets, and as well as maggots at Tunnel. So.
Yeah, it's amazing how it changes. Incredible. Honestly, it's like chalk and cheese. You can go there, put a ball of micros in, go in, you're like, God, what's happening here? A week later, you go in and you can get a bite of chuck. So yeah, well done, Jason. It's nice to hear. I mean, don't forget now, though, if you do go back to Tunnel, even now, I'll tell you what will happen now. I think, unless it goes really shallow fishing, you'll have to draw well for that, I think. But believe you me, when I went with Jamie the other day, there was not a sign of a fish, and we caught one every single chuck. And you could go on your bottom rig and you'd be like that, and you must be just swimming around your line like, no, don't touch that.
Yeah,
and we went shallow, and he caught one every time. It was. If you go pleasure fishing this weekend, somewhere like Tunnel Barn or a venue like that, try shallow, because there's nothing better than getting on that early.
Yeah.
Time of year when you're still fishing light lines, light elastics, like 18 hooks, single mate. It's bloody brilliant. I love it. I could have stayed there all day.
Yeah.
Because you just miss it from last year.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
So.
Phil Nash is watching from Canada, moving home at the end of the year, so looking forward to some tips to get me back into match fishing in the southwest. So yeah, I
think Phil come to Acorn Fishery a while back. And he said he lives in Canada. I think he's a lorry driver. So Phil, he actually come down. Yeah, he loved it. Get back to Bridgewater, Phil. You know it makes sense. You don't want to live in Canada.
Yeah.
The weather's too bad here. You need some rain on you, man. Well, Canada's a lot colder in here. So yeah, it'd be nice to see you back, Phil. Come to the shop when you're back.
Definitely. Rob Driscoll said, "What's the difference?" You basically using shot or olivettes on your line on the pole, in your opinion, is it just a way of reducing the amount of shot? For example, if you're fishing like a gram plus, is it just a way of reducing the size of your bulk, or is there other benefits of having shot over an Olivet or an Olivet over shot? What's your thinking?
Yeah. Obviously, Olivets are a lot easier to get a very small bulk or get a bulk on the line very quickly. The only thing I will say, Rob, in my past of fishing for England, doing lots of river fishing, deep water fishing, I don't use an Olivet until I get to 1.5 grams float. That's my preferred way, because I do like a decent, like when I'm fishing with like a gram, it's a lot of number 8s, you know, but at the end of the day, that's how I prefer. You don't get no tangles. I think it goes through the water better, especially when you're catching roach and skimmers like that in deep water. When I went to Meadowlands the other week, I just felt having a nice stretch bulk like that, it slows it down going through the water.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain it, you know. And if I sort of took you coaching, you would understand it more.
Well, you rig for straight away. If you've got an Olivet and you drop it in or lay it in or whatever, automatically goes like this, and your Olivet falls so quickly that everything below can only fall alongside, and that's where you get your hooking over the top of your Olivet. Yeah. Whereas if you've got a long bulk, it naturally kicks everything below it away, doesn't it, for a slow fall?
Yeah, and it's hard. You can never know. I know I know lots of companies have done underwater stuff, filming stuff. You will never understand. You know, I've done like quite a lot of blubberman fishing in different countries over the years, and people like Alan Scoffel, Will Rayson, Steve Gardner, Sean Ashby. You know, when we're all together, I know in certain circumstances, if that bait is not going past those fish at a certain rate, they won't touch it. You know that, Jake, and it's hard to explain that, but it's the truth. So all those things I think about, and like I said, when I'm fishing, when I'm doing a rig of 1 gram, I could use number 10s or number 9 droppers, depending, but normally number 10s. And then I'll just have a bulk of number 8s. And a 1.25 float, I normally stick with number 8s as well. So a lot of number 8s, you know, but I just think for presentation, and once you've caught on something, and this is the thing fishing for England, and the thing of talking about it, which is really important, unless you fish for England and fished at that level with all like the Italians, you know, if you look at the Italians, the way they shot up sometimes, they have what they call a tapered. Well, you've never seen nothing like it. It must take them hours to set it up. Yeah. They've got this like tapered bulk, and sometimes they go the opposite. It's opposite bulk, isn't it? It's all like weird.
Reverse tape, yeah.
But it works, and they do a lot of Carasio fishing, lots of skimmer fishing. When we actually go, like when we used to go to the Summer World Chat, our rigs were like quite aggressive, really, considering. You learn and pick that up, and you bring that back and do it in your own fishing. You think that actually works. So an Olivet is obviously a lot easier. If you do use Olivets, Rob, what I would say, like if you were doing a gram float, for instance, I'd probably only put like a 0.6 Olivet on. Yeah. So make sure you've got a few shot either side the Olivet. I always use the Olivets, the inline Olivets. I don't like the ones that you've got the little pins on each end. No. I think you get tangles with them. So if you do use Olivet, try and stick the ones with the inline, and then try and get several shot. I normally try and get 4 or 5 shot below and 2 or 3 above. Yeah. And that, like Jake was saying, that going through the water, it sort of kicks it off a little bit. But like I said, really speaking for me, I don't put an Olivet on until I get up to 1.5 rig and bigger.
Yeah. I think that's some.
But if you don't like biting or pliering number 8s on, stick with Olivets.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair enough.
There's a lot of work. There's a lot of work put in. Probably on a gram rig, what is there, 12?
It would, 12 would be, on a gram, 12 would be, 896, 0.96, wouldn't it? So you'd have that and a number 10.
Yeah, it's quite a lot of work, but it's worth it in the end, I think.
Yeah. Right, Richard Webb, we can both
Oh,
answer this one. So he said, soaked some Sonu wafters in absolute liquid flavour to help spiking them. This worked really well, but now I've found that they are not as neutrally buoyant as they were beforehand. Any advice? And one thing I'd say to that, Richard, there is a balance, isn't there? So
yeah.
if you're, for example, Des floods them and is quite happy fishing them like that, knowing that like they lose a bit of their sort of wafted ability, or waftiness, which isn't a word, but yeah.
Good word. Is that in the Oxford Dictionary?
I doubt it.
Wafting ability.
But personally, I go down the route of as little as possible to get them as soft as I need them to be able to bayonet, but without losing that sort of waftability. So
I just been off me mad.
you just go absolutely nuts with it, don't you?
I was like, unless the jars are full up with it, I think there's not enough on it.
Yeah. Whereas
you were like one little squeeze is enough. I'm like, that ain't enough for me, Jake.
yeah. So that's the thing, Richard. You do need to go with like balance. Personally, just a little splash, shake it around, and like leave it. Des is quite happy flooding them, and he does lose a bit of that side of it.
I think there's one point there, Jake, is if you buy brand new bandems, you can put very little on. If you've got bandems that are, I know we've all got it, years old, and they are years old now. Some of these, some people, they probably had them in their bags for 4 years. I think that's where you probably need a lot more, really, to make sure it does take long. When they're really, really new from the shops, you can make that liquid flavouring go in very, very quickly. But I've had bandems since they ever come out in my garage, and they are like, well, I should just chuck them away with it. If I just dose them up with that liquid flavouring, they're fine.
They're back in it, aren't they? Back in the game.
Back in the game.
Yeah, fair enough. So that's what we're saying on that one, Richard.
Yeah, don't worry too much. Just get the monopoly on it and you'll be fine.
Des, what are your thoughts? This is a good question from Lee. Lee said, what are your thoughts on circle hooks, so an MCM, versus GPM, KKM, so a non-circle hook, basically, on the method? Do you prefer one style over the other?
It's very difficult for me, Lee. Obviously I know Steve Ringer well, and I know he uses like the circle hooks a lot for Bollingtons and places like that. It's very difficult for me because when Ricky Teal was in charge of Preston, he did ask me, this is a true story, he said, Des, he said, carp hooks, and this was many, many years ago. He said, what do you want in carp fishing for hair rigging? Because back then hair rigging was just sort of starting out. I said, and I remember it was 1996, I went to Denmark in the Embassy Pairs World Championships, whatever it was, and Klaus Fix, who, if anybody knows Klaus, he was very on that. He loved that style of fishing. He used to use these trout hooks, and these trout hooks had an out-turned eye. I went around his house with my friend Steve Mayo because we qualified and we wanted to try and win it, and he was like the top man at the time. And then Ricky asked me the question years ago, and he said, what about carp hooks? I said, we ever thought about doing one with an out-turned eye? And he's like, what do you want that for? And I'm like, well, because the line goes in, it doesn't kick off as bad. He's like, oh, right, okay. And I thought, he didn't take any notice of that. That's a bit miserable of him. I went, and he called me up about 6 months later. He said, do you want to come out to the factory for like a product meeting? I said, yeah, all right. So I went out and he chucked these hooks at me. He said, what do you reckon about them? I said, you crafty bugger. And he'd actually done the PR36, which was the out-turned eye. And that was an iconic hook in carp match fishing for me. I think the out-turned eye was there in trout fishing, salmon fishing, but it wasn't there in match fishing. And I used that hook for absolutely years and years. And it was just one that you just use that hook. Anything to do with hair rigging, that was the hook you used. And obviously Preston then, like PTFE coated hooks, very popular. So they were dark in colour, they stayed sharp, and that's when we brought the KKM in, which is basically like a PR36. Better steel, a little bit like, well, it was the same hook really, it's just PTFE coated and a little bit sharper, and a better quality steel. So I was using them, and then they brought the KKH out, and we all know in the last so many years, the carp fishing, commercial fishing, has become, the carp have got bigger, the weights have got bigger, and you know, the KKH fitted into that style of fishing. So for me, I've never really, the only time I've really ever used an MCM, which is the circle look, is probably when I'm going to Boddington's, place like that, which I don't, because the KK, I find it so difficult not to fish with a KKM and a KKH, because I'm so used to having a PR36 back in the day. Why would I change? I don't lose fish on them. They do a barb version, so if you want to go bream fishing with them, herring and worms, it just fits the whole bill. But I know a lot of people out there love the circle looks.
Yeah, so it's so essentially personal preference, but
but
neither's right, neither's wrong.
Is super strong. They are mega strong. I would say they are definitely stronger than a KKH. So
I think the shape makes it that they can get away with being like, they are a strong wire, but if they were lighter, because of the shape of them, it's never really going to straighten sort of thing.
They are so sharp and so strong, them circle hooks.
Yeah.
If you were, if you're that way inclined with thick hook lengths, big fish, maybe sort of fishing up against snags, lilies, weeds and stuff like that, then them circle hooks would definitely come into my fishing. But I don't really go to venues really like that. So yeah, it's the PR36's fault why I don't use much else, to be honest.
It's fair enough.
But yeah.
Right, we're gonna go through. There's probably 5 or 6 more questions to go through, so we're gonna smash through them. We've been on for an hour and a half so far, Des. So
I'll just say that your sister's house is very well presented.
You should see it. It's absolute. She's like an internal designer. Look at it.
And you're going to destroy it, aren't you?
I'm quite good. I'm quite tidy. Yes.
Have you got your dog down there?
Yeah, I do. Minnie?
Are you allowed to have the dogs in there or what? I bet she's not happy about the situation.
Jade loves her. She's
yeah, I can tell that by your facial expression.
Yeah, she's not too bad. Right, let's get through these these questions. So
next thing, Jake, you've got to talk about is have we got some new products coming out?
We do. So you may have seen, you may have expected them to be out already by now.
Can you say?
Yeah, I can say about them, but I can't necessarily go into too much detail. Usually they would be out by now. You would have started seeing some sort of teasers and some launch videos and things like that. Ian Day, who is the main man at the Sonu factory, hasn't been very well, so we decided that we were going to delay our launch a little bit. So it's going to be sort of probably towards the end of this month, something like that. Once you're in full flow.
So lovely little bits.
Oh yeah, so it'll be worth the wait. Definitely.
Very, very well done. The guys at the factory, again, always say that because it is hard to come up with new bits and that, isn't it? But they've done an amazing job again. Yeah,
just some everything on there is something that we feel like will just tie into everybody's fishing within the team. Like it's just nice bits that like everybody will use, I think. So yeah, you can look forward to that very soon. But it's one of them. A few companies obviously have gone already because usually it's about this sort of time that we would usually do a launch, but just a few weeks later this year just because of what's been going on. So let's see, where were we? Roy has said, so we're going to go quick fire kind of here, Des. Roy has said, is there a starting point in terms of pole and pole length Des would tell somebody who is getting one for the first time?
Yeah, all right, Roy. I always say to people, I'd be dead straight. Always try and get the best pole that you can. If you're starting out, go careful because you don't really want to go and buy a really expensive pole. If you haven't got the right rollers, if you're not overly sort of confident, then just be careful. You might be maybe even start off with a margin pole if you're just starting out. Try and get, I would say, start off with a margin pole, 8.5, 10 meters. few £100, you know, 250 to 300 quid. But the next pole up from that, I would try and get like definitely a 13 or a 14.5 metre pole. Get used to that, you know, and that's it really, you know. And then after that, really, I always say to people that I know it's all about budget and what you can afford, but always try and push yourself as much as you can for your next pole up from that. So once you've got used to a 13 metre pole, say sort of 700-800 quid, because that's how much they're going to be for a decent 13 metre pole, I would say. Try and push yourself then to like 1,500 quid, really. We all know everything's gone up, and unfortunately, you know, poles have as well. But yeah, try and get a, you know, margin pole to start with, 8.5, 10 metre. Get used to that. Even if you can get a 30 metre pole to start with, but not too expensive, and then your next pole up, try and get like a 16 metre pole, because if you start fishing matches, they're going to be really, really important. And the thing you've got to remember, a lot of people buy a 16 metre pole and they don't actually use the 14.5 and 16 metre. Some of the guys I know, they've still got the 16 metre piece in the polythene. They've not even actually taken it out. But at 13 metres, 11.5 metres, that pole is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And that's what you've got to think is, you know, if you buy a pole for 1,500 quid or so, that pole at 13 metres will probably be very close to a 3,000 quid pole.
Mm.
It won't be the same at 14.5 and 16, because that's what you pay your money for. But yeah, start off with a margin, work your way up to 700-800 quid, something like that, and then your next pole, try and push your budget up to sort of maybe up to 2,000 quid, because then you're into the realms of fishing 14.5 metres comfortably. Simple as that, really.
Excellent. Neil, hi guys. What are the main ingredients in So Natural Canal Black, which was previously just So Natural Black, but we changed it because it is very much a canal sort of mix, dark. And basically the main ingredients in that are, the base is a bread base, so like brown crumb, black crumb. It's got quite a lot of crushed hemp in there, so it's quite an active mix, but it's quite fine. It's got salt in there and also coriander, so it's quite a simple mix, but it's very, very good as just a nice fine canal mix. Quite active, so you're going to be targeting sort of fish of all sizes, smaller roach, better roach, skimmers, but it's got quite a lot of coriander in there, which as we know is a great ingredient for silverfish in general, but in particular roach. We've got, I fished my so this, he's got it's a work account I think, but Biscuit. I fish my local and it's hard there. There are a handful of carp, tench, roach, eyed and perch, with a few pike. I am struggling to get the bigger species, and the silvers are few and far between as well. He probably just asking what tactics would you tend to go for to catch those better fish, the carp, tench, and...
It's hard because I don't know the venue, but obviously a little method feeder. If there's only a handful of carp in there, a method feeder, straight lead, corn, anywhere where it's like that, corn can be great bait. Every corn on the method, every corn on the bomb, and on the pole, it's hard to say because obviously it's very, very difficult, but I would say definitely put a little bit of ground bait in, maybe some chop worms if there's tension there, fish like that, then chop worm could be really, really good. I find on some venues, especially when we start getting into the spring, even like estate lakes and things like that, fish turn onto worms very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Another, you don't need loads, quarter of a kilo, chop some up, piece of worm on like an inch long, or even a whole dendra. If you go into a lake with just a few big fish in it and you're trying to target them, worms in corn, even hemp can be amazing. I mean, I used to go to a lot of lakes down in Devon when the close season was still going. I used to just loose feed hemp with a catapult, fish worm on the hook. It was a great way. I don't do it anymore, but when I used to go down on my own, I used to just lash hemp in with a catapult, fish a worm on the hook. It was fantastic fishing. So something like that. Hemp, I think hemp could be a real good target bait. Good bait to feed and just fish corn and worms over the top.
Well, those better fish there, the carp, the tench, love it, don't they?
They love it. They absolutely love it. I don't introduce it probably as much as what I should do, but obviously, like if I went to a lake like that, I would probably introduce hemp, 100%. They absolutely love it. And the thing is with hemp, loose feed it, gives you a great big area. They come over it, thrive on it. Look at carp anglers; they just feed hemp for the sake of it. They love it, and it just keeps the fish moving around, moving around the bottom, and keeps them in your peg at the end of the day.
Yeah. Michael Wilson said he had the pleasure of meeting you on Saturday with his 10-year-old lad. Made his lad so happy. Top man, Des.
No worries, Michael. It was a pleasure to meet you and your son. And I even give him a lift round to the cafe in my van. Can't
be bad. What a gentleman. Zolt has...
I'd have done it to you, Jay.
No, you'd have made me work. Zolt has said, what ground bait does he need to take to Southfield on the weekend? Super crushed green.
Super crushed green, Zolt, with a bit of pro fatchers. That's what I'd be fishing there. He needs to get his act together, doesn't he?
He does. No, he's done well in your coaching the uncoachable, and I'm sure he'll be.
Yeah, he wants to do another one. And we've been asked quite a lot. When's the next one coming? And I'm not sure what we're going to do. I've got to speak to Adam Mumble and work out what we're going to do. Whether we're going to do a carpy one or possibly a steelfish one. Or maybe I think a feeder one could be really, really good.
Yeah,
he likes his feeder.
He does like his feeder fishing. Right, 2 last questions. We've got Liam Parkinson. This is a good one. Would you ever add salt to a ground bait mix? Been seeing it more by the big carp anglers. And I'll start on this just because it's something that we've done quite a lot more recently with some of the ground baits we've been introducing. So for example, last year we introduced.
Have you done a super crushed green with salt in it?
We've got a new mix coming that's very nice. But last year we added So Natural Deep Water, which is a natural mix, which is more salty than some of our previous natural mixes. All of our So Natural range has a bit of salt in, but So Natural Deep Water is a saltier mix than the previous ones. It's one of its sort of main things. And then we also introduced Super Crush Salted Caramel, which obviously is a pellet mix. It's ground pellets. It's got a bit of biscuit in there, but it's mainly crushed pellets, a bit of fish meal, a bit of crushed digestive biscuit, but also contains salt. So the name Salted Caramel, obviously it's got some caramel flavour, but it has an element of salt. And that has been a brilliant margin mix, and obviously it's been brilliant for people catching big carp in the edges. And I think that saltiness to it, like you say, the big carp side of things, they use a lot of salt. It's something that hasn't really been done in match fishing, but last year we did it. We thought, what can we do that's different than anything else that we do in the range? And adding salt to fish meal type mixes is very different. It's not really been done in the match side, but the salted caramel ground bait has been very popular. And there's something else coming which hasn't directly got added salt, but it's got some ingredients which have an element of natural salt in there, and that'll be coming in our launch very soon, which is another really nice mix, which I think is just going to be a really good all-rounder. I think Des will love it because of its sort of it's took some inspiration from some of his favourite mixes, but it has got that element of sort of saltiness to it, not because we're adding extra salt, but because of some of the ingredients that are in there. So you'll like that, Liam. Right, last question. Do you have anything to add on that, Des, or are you quite happy with that one?
You've done all that, Jake. I love to start with the ingredients, and I'm like, you carry on with that one, Jake.
Yeah, so you will like that, Liam.
I just look at the finished article I do and say, I'll have a go with it, and that's it. I don't get it.
That's caught me a lot of fish.
But you're like the scientist side of the situation.
Exactly. So, and then Kevin, last question, has said, when you're fishing hair rigs, do you prefer a band or bayonet?
Well, Kevin, I do. I think all of us, like match anglers, always look at the stealthy side of things. And when you put a band around something, yeah, you've got that plastic band around it. It is a lot easier. Obviously, you can go from a hard pellet, a bander, even put banded maggots on. But yeah, when you go into a hard water, you're only fishing for a few bites. I think having a bayonet on, hiding that whole bayonet in the bait looks ideal. It's very like, you know, I know you've got a great big hook by the side of it, but for me, I have changed over. Like tomorrow, Sheerwater, I will be using bayonets with randoms. Something that I've just thought, you know, there's nothing, everything's hidden, and yeah, and it's just one of them. It's like the perfect presentation, really. Very simple to do. The only thing is, obviously, if you want to put a pellet on, you can. And all I do, Kevin, I have me, because elasticated stems tomorrow. I've got all my ICS stems done with 12 hollow, the original purple hollow elastics, which I think is what I've done in method feeder fishing. Elasticated stems, that stuff doesn't let me down. I know roughly I can catch 150 pound of fish on it. That's like a small fish, somewhere like topper, for instance. I worked out when I'm doing a lot of method feeder fishing there. And all I do is have like several stems with a different hook length on.
Yeah.
And you can have one with a band on, you know, one with a band on if you want, one with a bayonet. Normally I have one with a bayonet because I'm fishing with bandoms, and I'll just have one with a 4-inch hook length with just a hook on it, where I can just put, if I need to, I can put maggots on it. So instead of changing the hook lengths, I just change the actual stems. And it's as simple as undoing the swivel at the end. You know, you can obviously interchange the feeders, that ain't a problem. But just have your hook lengths on the stems, and that's a quicker way of doing it rather than sort of messing around too much. So yeah, I do prefer bayonets, and a lot of people, when you're F1 fishing now, I think a lot of people, when I went to Tamar, I was fishing method feeders for small skimmers, the bayonet was, you didn't even think about using a band, because it was just, you know, when you're fishing those little mini bandams as well,
yeah,
if you can just put a small bayonet in, you know, it was literally concealed, you couldn't see nothing. Where if you had a big thick band around it, it's like, it didn't look so nice, it didn't look, even sometimes I know it doesn't matter, but in here, which we all know about fishing, a lot of it's in here, it's with confidence that what you're doing is going to work. So bayonets if I can, obviously, and if you start fishing hard pellets, then I'll just use a band.
Yeah. Sounds good. Right then, guys. So, good Q&A, Des.
Yes, I think that went down quite well, Jake.
Yeah. So
I can't the numbers or anything, but
no, we've had plenty on, over 100 throughout, so that's good. And yeah, plenty will catch up later on. So thanks everybody for joining us. Like I've said previously, there'll be one of these every month. We'll mix up the angler. It just who it falls with. Myself and Des are out again very soon to do an actual ships tips video, a full length ships tips. So if you've got any ideas for that, by all means let us know. Yeah, and we shall leave it there.
Don't forget, I am starting to do some YouTube stuff. I've done some videos already, so if you is it subscribe?
Yeah, subscribe to Des's own channel.
To Des's YouTube channel. I'm going to be doing all sorts of tips on there. Most of it, I've got to get a YouTube name for a sport account. Oh, I've done it. I've done it.
Keep an eye on your Facebook page for it.
Look out for that, because there's going to be tips on there. I've done a couple of tips already about all sorts of things: elasticated poles, elasticated like knots. There'll be Dacron stuff on there, and there's things that I know we spoke about before, but everybody forgets, and little tips and stuff like that. So yeah, and then I'll try and do some YouTube stuff of where I've been fishing, little films of where I've been, you know, how I've caught and things like that. So just stick with me. I am trying.
Yeah, brilliant. That sounds great.
Technical side of it is not my greatest thing, but I am trying. I'm getting there slowly.
Sounds brilliant. Right.
But thank you very much for obviously, you know, watching today and getting your questions on.
Yep, lovely. Right, we shall
have a good weekend coming up, because the weather looks a lot better than what it has been.
It does. Absolutely glorious out there. Have a look at that.
I might even get my motorbike out this afternoon, Jake.
It sounds brilliant.
I don't ride it in the wet.
Sounds great. Right, guys, thanks for watching.